Hi, beautiful people.
Hello, guys.
Welcome to She Speaks Sacred,
where her voice becomes a sacred right.
She Speaks,
We listen.
Spirit moves. I'm Wamboi Mukunda.
And I am Zanele. We want to talk about grief. And we just want to briefly talk about grief and how grief in the African society is perceived or is even, taken, and how we go about grieving in African society, because we are seeing two different ways of grief in nowadays as compared to what we were expected to, grieve in the olden days. For example, in the olden days, when you lose a family member, your family had to mourn for at least a certain period of time where there's no sexual intercourse from anybody within that family or anybody who belongs to that family or is related to the deceased. And there's too many things that used to be done. There are rituals that used to be done just in that period of grief and after grief. But what we are seeing nowadays, we are seeing a totally different scenario where people are grieving differently. And some are saying that it's therapeutic for them to grieve that way. It makes them, heal faster. But it's just contradictory to the traditional and cultural ways in which we were taught that grief has to be taken as Africans. And we want to look at this because I think as we are going back to practicing our spirituality as Africans, it's very important for us to understand death, for us to understand, life as a whole, as the African people, because we live knowing that we are temporal in this realm. We have to eventually transition to the different realm of the spiritual realm. So we need to understand that for those who have already transitioned, how do we now grieve them if we have to grieve them, or how do we now proceed them to the other realm? So there's different ways that we used to do it, and I just want us to talk about it because I think it's important for us to understand that aspect of grief as we are continuing. Like right now, we see a lot of young people drinking alcohol as a celebration of somebody, who has died. Yes, it might be somebody who used to love the fun, the parties, the alcohol, but is it really the right way to do it as according to our traditions and our spirituality? And how long do we grieve somebody nowadays? It's very different. You'd hear, I lost my dad, the following day having sexual intercourse with their partner, which is totally wrong in our spirituality. There's ways in which you'd cleanse yourself after grieving. After a certain period of time, there's a way that you'd now go back and cleanse yourself and remove that energy, because death is a negative, dark energy within the home. As much as we welcome it as a transition for this person, it's still dark for us who are in this other realm. What do you understand about grief, and in which realm are you looking at it in terms of how we do it? Is it the modern or the olden day, kind of doing it?
Yeah, maybe I can start from the very beginning, how in our culture, the Kikuyu culture, how we used to grieve and how the burial process used to happen.
Yeah.
So we used to, once the spirit ceremony has been done, the spirit has been released to go to the spiritual world now. The body used to be thrown in the forest. That's what they used to do previously. But at some point, they introduced another system where they would slaughter a cow, and then the skin from the cow, they would cover it and bury the person. But now with the Christianity coming in, we have now the caskets happening where people are buried using the caskets. For the Christians, there is the cross that is there. For the Kikuyu, the people who practice the Kikuyu culture, we only have the casket and the belongings, some of the personal belongings, spiritual belongings of the person who is being buried. So it's for the Kikuyu culture, it's been evolving with time and how things are progressing. And nowadays, it's looking more like a fun kind of an activity where people are finding it like a trip. It's a road trip for them. It's a road trip for them. But at the end of the day, I don't know whether that's people are using alcohol to cope with grief, because you find it's changed in the way. Because before, for burials, Kikuyus, we are not so much into the burial ceremony. It's something that is done so fast and we are done and we move on with our life. Unlike other cultures where it happens for days and days where they mourn that person before they are finally buried. For us, it's just within a few days you're buried and life moves
That's
on.
it, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen in your culture, it's a process that you take for a few days. But in Kikuyu, chap, and then we move on
Life
with our
moves
life.
on.
Yeah. So for us, we are not so much into burial ceremonies that
Once
much.
you are gone, you are gone.
Once you're gone, you're gone, yes. Even though after within a year's period, we do a ceremony where we remember you and then we release your spirit now to go to the spiritual, to the other world now. So, but it's not so much ingrained in us for the burial ceremony. Yeah.
And releasing of the spirit, is it a ritual that is being done, or that's why I have a problem with us trying to modernize culture, because culture cannot be modernized. And I've seen with Kikuyus, for example, when it's the time for helping this person transition, because in our cultural beliefs, we believe and know that once you die, your spirit goes to a realm where it's trying to find where it belongs.
Yeah.
And then there's supposed to be a transitioning, because in that realm, it's easy for somebody to tap into that spirit and use it for evil deeds until that spirit has been transitioned to the realm where you are now closer to God and can now, sit at the same table with God and make decisions for your people, for your clan, and for your family. So for Kikuyus, I know that there's a goat, or is it a sheep that is being slaughtered,
and you
for
as a
that
family, yeah.
But with the problem that I have now is that some will now call a father to say, we are now remembering this soul, we are now remembering, and you are trying to merge Christianity with spirituality, African spirituality, which is something that is totally wrong, because those two things can never mix anyway. And in my culture, it's very clear. Once you die, a cow has to be slaughtered, and that cow is used for your transitioning, to help you go to the realm where you are supposed to be a good ancestor to your family. There's no way that we can now call a pastor to come and help. No. If it's a cow that needs to be slaughtered, it's one of the family members who has to do it. And that's where we have to be very clear as the young generation that is coming up, because we are grieving differently. We are doing things in a way that when you now go back to understand, why is it that this thing is continuing in our family? For example, if it's suicide, you find that a lot of our belief in our culture is that suicide is something that is very wrong. And for it to be stopped, you have to cut off that spirit in that family, disconnect totally. And there are ways in which you need to disconnect. But you'll find some people inviting a pastor to pray over that spirit when the spirit is just laughing and thinking, what are you even doing? You see? And there's ways in which we used to clear those things: slaughter, do this, speak, say this and this and that. And there's places where we do it in the kraal, where the cows sleep. So when you are now inviting a pastor and then there's cooking that is done, there's a lot of confusion, and we need to unpack these things for us to understand life, death, because death for us in the African spirituality is also a big part of who we are. Our ancestors are a huge part of who we are.
I feel like our parents' generation and our generation, we are sort of confused, because we find in most ceremonies we are mixing.
It's true.
So we don't know how to differentiate a Christian ceremony and an African culture ceremony. So that brings a lot of confusion. And then we find ourselves, we are not doing things the right way, the way we are supposed to do, until something starts happening in your family, and then you start asking yourself, there's a pattern that is happening here. There are people who are dying of suicide, one after the other. Why is that? Then you go back. There's a ceremony that you didn't do, or you didn't do the correct way. And no wonder now this is coming back to hurt your family. I think for grief, I think we still need to find a way, especially us as young people, on how we are supposed to grieve in the right way. I do not know who is going to guide us on that, because you find the people that we are looking up to for that information, they do not have that, because they're also confused on what to do at the moment. Because you see, for Kikuyu culture, the way I've mentioned, the burial, the way they were done, they have changed over the years. So right now, they're still looking for a new structure on how they're going to be doing, which is more modernized and which is more aligned with the times that we are living in. For Kikuyu culture, once the burial is done, and people have gone, it's a family alone that is left to grieve. And I feel like that's usually the most lonely time after. And the way the society is set up right now, you have to go back to work. You've not finished mourning the relative that you are mourning. Like, life moves so fast. And at some point, you reach a point that you get a breakdown on that. I think we should also introduce ways that people I don't know whether it's like a community that needs where people can feel comfortable to go and speak about their grieving, kind of a therapy session. Yeah, where people can go and speak out and have their feelings out so that they are able to mourn in the proper way and able to move their life without being held back by the grief that they're experiencing. Yeah.
I think also being busy helps. In our olden day society, you used to have a lot of work going on in the homestead, farming. There was just too much to do. So, for example, for us, when somebody dies, the girls, the boys are sleeping in, the grandmother's house. That's the girls, the boys in the grandfather's house. Those are the young ones who are not married. They are all being guided just to ensure that they are not, doing funny things out there. And the ones who are married, they also know that we are not supposed to be interacting, sexually. And it's a moment for you to stay away, to, I don't know if it's, you stay clean, because there's nothing wrong with having sex. So you just avoid such things. And then immediately after, then there's a period after the burial, of which now you have to extend. And then 1 month later, there's also something that we do. It's just a lot of things. But for us, I feel like for my ancestors, it was not such a difficult thing for them to get over death and to grieve, because immediately after that, during the burial period, you're not supposed to farm, you're not supposed to touch the land, you're not supposed to do any farm work. But after the person has been buried, now you can be able to go back to your farm. And I've realized that farming is very therapeutic. Until you go to the farm and do that farm work, for me, it has helped me. I recently lost my sister in March, and immediately after that, I started farming. I swear to you, that thing has been so therapeutic to me. When I feel that cloud of emotions, I just take my things and I go to the farm. I find myself even forgetting the space that I'm in. So it has been very much therapeutic. I think it's also the grounding that you do when you're within the farm. So I think for our people, grief for them was very quick to get over, because they had a lot of things to do and they had ways in which they managed. There were timelines also. You used to know that after a week, we are done. We can go back to living normally. But my problem right now is how we are incorporating modernity with culture. We will have a problem somewhere, and we really need to go back to finding ourselves. Some people will say, but you are still wearing the white man's clothes. What do you mean? You are speaking the language of the white person. You don't understand that we are doing this because we want to reach greater audiences and get these messages to other people. And
the fact that we also used to have clothes of our own, and we still produce clothes of our own as African people. Maybe I can mention why some of the things that you shouldn't do when you are doing that period of grieving, as you've said, the sexual interactions. This was because the moment you're grieving, and that energy that is around that time is the grief energy. So you may be welcoming in spirits that are not wanted. So the moment you go and have sex and conceive a child, that child, in Kikuyu culture, we used to call them the red thigh.
Still called?
They are still called the same, So that child, when they come to this world, you find that every time they try to get with a partner, the partner dies. Up to the 9th partner, the one who would survive. But the 8 of them, they would die, just because that's how our culture was meant. Because there are things that were set.
Sacred.
Sacred. That you shouldn't, the same way we say you can't be having 2 rituals at the same time. You can't be having 2 ceremonies at the same time. The same way you are grieving and also practicing sexual interaction.
Which is a ritual.
Which is also a ritual, So you shouldn't, I think the young generation right now, they are not aware of these things, and no wonder we are here to communicate to them some of these things they're not supposed to be doing while they are grieving.
And do you know how many red thighs we have right now, just because our parents never took this thing seriously? And when you ask, as that woman, why is it that when I get somebody who's promising to be my husband, I lose them from nowhere? Your parents will not even tell you, because they totally lost it. And maybe one day you'll go to a mundumugo and they'll tell you, this is because this is what happened for you to be conceived. And that is when now you start to realize that, oh my goodness, there's a lot to be fixed. So the reason we're saying we cannot mix culture with modern day society, things need to stay the way they were. There are reasons, because how do you explain to your child that I conceived you during a time of grief,
mourning,
mourning, and how do you now correct that? It's a mistake that you did as a parent. How do you now go back and correct that? Because this is a child who's suffering. They brought you a man this day, tomorrow, the next day, there's nothing working for them.
Yeah.
So we need to be very, very much careful what we do in the name of those are things of the past.
And we are modern now.
You are modern.
We are the new
And they're still
generation.
affecting us.
Yeah, true. Let us know how your experience has been in terms of grief. Have you experienced grief in recent times, and how are you coping with that?
Yeah.
And as we end this, I would say, take time, go at your own speed, mourning the person that you've lost. Mourn them the way you feel like is best for you, because at the end of the day, you need to be strong enough for you. You need to take care of you need to move on with this life, because life moves on. Even though they are no longer with us, life will still move on. And also, let's keep on honoring those who have left us. Let's continue honoring them, because they are our ancestors, and the more we honor them, the more, even in the spiritual world, they will also be glorified,
And so, I like how you say honoring. We don't worship our ancestors. We honor knowing that they were here before us, and we honor the great works that they have done for us.
True. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Anything to add on that?
No, I think we'll close it here, guys. Let us know what you think, and please support us by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.